Official welcome to Schiller Learning's live Tuesdays at 2. In today's session, we're going to talk about tips to reboot your homeschool. You may have seen some of what we're going to be talking about today and in the series of emails that we have been sending out with the homeschool resolutions. We're going to talk about those things in a different way today. But these are tips that, no matter what style of homeschooling you're doing, no matter what age child you're working with, these are things that are going to help you maximize your efforts. And if you found that before you took your holiday break, you started to lose some of that momentum that you had at the beginning of the school year, these tips are going to help reboot and renew your homeschool efforts because, we're putting all of this time and energy into homeschooling our children. We want to make sure that we're actually reaping the maximum benefit from that. If you do have any questions during the session, please go ahead and drop those into the chat box. And I am your host, Antoinette LaGrossa. I've been with Schiller Learning since 2004. I joined the team shortly after trying the curriculum with my own child and having just an amazing turnaround in our homeschooling experience, math in particular. And that Montessori mindset, the Montessori philosophy of education, you're going to see that influence in all of these tips. They're also all tips that are, while maybe not necessarily easy to implement because it means that maybe you're going to change a habit and new habits take a little while to take hold, but they're not going to take you a lot of time to implement. It is simply becoming aware and giving those small tweaks to what you're doing, your mindset, your child's mindset, helping them to become self-aware and and then making those small changes. So the first tip, and you have heard us talk about this in a lot of different aspects, is going to be to give your child responsibilities. And, in the email it said, reference to the weight of the world not being a bad thing. And that phrase is often used in a negative connotation. But if we are preparing our child to take on the things that they are capable of as soon as they are capable, it is going to, through a very slow progression throughout their childhood, get them ready for adulthood. But it's also going to help make them better students in all academic disciplines. And incorporating this at a very young age is important, but it is never too late to start. So age appropriate chores, that's something that you see a lot of, as far as recommendations in Montessori. And this starts when your child is an infant and training them to return things to where they belong. And that is one of the things that I absolutely loved immediately in the Schiller Learning curriculum is that returning things to where they belong was actually part of the program. So that when your child is finished with the material, they're going to put all of those things away exactly where they belong before moving on to the next activity. So, that's going to help simply in household management because it means that we're not the ones who are, going after every little thing in the house, trying to make sure it is where it belongs so that the next time we want to use it, that is a seamless process. But it's also going to help avoid mental clutter. And physical clutter, and there are multiple studies that show this, that physical clutter actually um, interrupts a child's ability to focus and concentrate it, and not just children. It does it for us as well. So those age appropriate chores and training them from as early as possible to return things where they belong, dust, wipe the table, doing food preparation, laundry, mopping, mowing, yard work, all of those things that generally we did as children. And, with each subsequent generation, it seems that kids in general, that it's not as true in homeschool community. Kids do tend to have more household responsibilities. Just be aware of that. Also, age appropriate decision making. We don't want to shield our child from the realities of the world, and that comes in with chores, decision making, as well as not hiding struggles from your kids. Sometimes as parents, we feel like, we don't want to let our child know about, a particular rough time that we may be struggling through, and the decision making process that we go through and how to address it. But by, sharing those with kids, again, in an age appropriate way, we're actually helping to prepare them for their own decision making. And then when things don't go right, and kids have had an insight into your decision making process, that can also be beneficial. Okay, number two, including your child in the decision-making process. And this is really an extension of that previous one, but in a more in-depth way, because student buy-in um, is much higher when the student is part of the decision-making process. A crucial part of the decision-making process is goal setting and goal tracking. Including that language and including those topics in ongoing conversation with your family is going to help your child become um, goal oriented and help to develop a growth mindset. All of the things we talk about today contribute to developing a growth mindset. That, by the way, it is implied, but that is the type of mindset that we want our child and ourselves to have. Fixed mindset is when you think, okay, well, I only have a little bit, a set amount of talent. And if something doesn't come naturally to me, I just can't do it. Whereas a growth mindset recognizes that, sure, sometimes things come naturally to us, but um, there are also going to be things in life. Oftentimes, they are our larger goals and things that will make major changes in our lives. Sometimes those are going to be things that have a harder path and may involve struggle, but recognizing that through our hard work and perseverance, that we can achieve great things. So, raising awareness of what a goal is, involving your child in that goal setting process, and then as an extension of that, the homeschool planning. So we've got our goals. Now, what is our homeschool plan to accomplish those goals? ShillerLearning developed a couple of tools, and they're absolutely free, that will help you to that end. And that is our homeschool freebie bundle. Amanda has put into the chat the link to the uh, New Year, New Start sale, which, by the way, today is the last day for that sale. If Amanda, if you can also pop the link in there for the homeschool freebie bundle. and there are a couple of ways that you can find the planners, but the Homeschool Freebie Bundle, that has both the free parent homeschool planner as well as the coordinating student planner. If you have not yet downloaded these, and these are tools that, whether you're using Schiller Learning, math, or language arts or not, these are going to be fabulous tools to utilize in your homeschool planning. Uh, the bundle also includes scores of both math as well as language arts multisensory activities. And those things, again, no matter what program you're using, will make a wonderful supplement accent to what you're doing. If you are considering the Schiller Learning curriculum, that freebie bundle is a great way to easily see samples of Math Kit 1 for pre-K to third, Math Kit 2 for fourth through pre-algebra, the Fractions Kit, Language Arts Kit A for generally going to be pre-K kindergarten. That's when you're teaching your child basics of reading, letter sounds, letter names, beginning to blend simple short vowel words, and then Language Arts Kit B, which is generally going to be first through fourth grades for most children. There are tons of activity packs. There's lots of good stuff in there for you. If you are looking for a new solution in 2022. Okay, so your child's path can indeed be greatly improved by involving your child in the planning process, both the creation of that planning process as well as the fine tuning. So you can go ahead, go through those planner activities to, develop that plan. And planning, you can do that at the beginning of the school year prior to, and also at the end of the first semester, beginning of the second, that period that we're in right now. This is a great opportunity to go ahead and re-examine, go through that planning process again. So if you didn't include your child at the beginning of the school year, now is a great chance to do that. Including your child in the decision-making process is also a passive activity on the part of the child. And that happens when you are carefully observing your child. Uh, when we observe the child, we are going to catch things that we may not otherwise. And, Maria Montessori, she observed as a scientist and created her methods based on those observations. Um, our observations of the child is important as well, because that's going to let us know, like, okay, is there a material that they are often passing over? Are they bored? Are they frustrated? Um, what are they really engaged with for an extended period of time? It helps us to see their passions. And sometimes our child may have a passion that they don't even realize. Um, but recognizing, what are they drawn to, that can help us to, use those things as a launching pad. And then when it comes to your child's playthings, if there's something that they're not using, take it out of rotation. Um, when you take it out of rotation, it doesn't necessarily mean that you add it back in. If your child doesn't, ask for it, go looking for it after, maybe a couple of months, you might consider, donating that. Or you could try putting it back into the rotation, then seeing, okay, they do or don't decide to pull that activity out and do that again. But modern American children have too many things on average. And another interesting thing is that studies have repeatedly shown that children who have fewer toys, actually play with them more. When kids have just a wall full of things to choose from, they can get overwhelmed and end up not selecting any of them. So that observation, for academics as well as just everyday life as well. Okay, using positive parenting phrases instead of yelling. Very important. Uh, Parents unintentionally undermine their authority as well as their efforts with yelling and negative phrases. So, yelling, you've probably noticed if you've ever been yelled at, that it just immediately, without you even thinking about it, elicits a stress response. Your cortisol hormones increase, and cortisol actually interferes with the brain's ability to focus and process and store information. So, right off the bat, as soon as we introduce stress into a situation, it's academically undermining what we are trying to do. Maria Montessori believed that children should be talked to with maturity and respect, and that includes as we are interacting about on education topics. And if you do have any questions, you can put those into the chat. Either there's a direct to everyone, and you can also message me directly. So if you have any behaviors that are particularly challenging with the topics, you can just plug those in there. Okay. So there are some common phrases that parents can use that are sapping the motivation. And we're going to talk about those additional in that next tip. But, when we use words like may, can, or let's, we reduce power struggle. Okay, so we reduce power struggles and also we avoid sapping the child's internal motivation. And when we instead use positive parenting phrases, we are going to magnify the behaviors that we would like to multiply. Whatever you focus and comment on is what is going to tend to flourish and blossom in your child. So if you are focusing on their running, their yelling, it's going to tend to actually multiply those behaviors, unfortunately. And again, this isn't an unintentional thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we avoid rules. We want to make sure that, our kids have very clear, well communicated and reminded rules. And that is that phrase in our home, that's a way that we can just very matter of factly remind children of what the behavior expectations are, whether it's, a household matter or an academic. And using you may also helps the child to take ownership of their behavior. And we do 6 secrets, no, excuse me, 6 magic phrases to transform your homeschool. Those are 2 of them, the you may and in our home, we. I have people who at homeschool conventions will come back the next year after having attended that workshop and talk about implementing those magic phrases. And those are 2 of them that people have a lot of discussion. Okay, so you want your child to focus. I see how hard you're paying attention. As soon as we spot behaviors that we'd like to see more of, comment on that. Um, Now, it doesn't mean we always comment during the act. It's often beneficial to just make a mental note and make the comment afterwards, because sometimes just our praising the child can interrupt the focus and concentration that they're devoting to a task. So, maybe afterwards you say, I saw how hard you were working on that. Um, Another thing, I don't know if you have one who is a perfectionist and gets discouraged when they just don't automatically get a correct answer, and they really resist asking for help. They see asking for help as a failure. So you can make, an observation that when you see them reaching that, okay, they've tried all of these paths, just that simple, again, um, objective observation of asking for help when you've exhausted other paths is a good strategy. So that could be in response to them asking for help, or if you see that they are to that point and maybe haven't done that yet. So positive parenting phrases. And we've got some blog posts um, that give, an even longer, more exhaustive list of those. Okay, celebrate the uniqueness of each child. Uh, Avoid comparison. That can be very discouraging to a child. Well, your brother keeps his bed neat, but you don't. Your brother was good at math and you're not. Your sister is so good at writing essays, and you just haven't gotten more than 10 words on that piece of paper. That is a surefire way of discouraging the child. So, we want to celebrate the uniqueness of each child and allow them to follow their curiosity and become their best selves. Uh, some ways that we do that is to, you know, empower them to follow their interests and employ discovery based learning. Again, following the child. That goes back to that observation that we talked about earlier. Now, in your homeschool planning, of course, if you have 7 kids, you may not be able to fully maximize that interest based learning for all 7 of them, but you can certainly incorporate elements of that into all of your subjects. By the way, in the ShillerLearning curriculum, we have concept and manipulative indexes, so that if your child wants to work with a particular topic, you can look that up and see all the lessons that cover that. Or if your child, and now I'm sorry, I was just uh, reading that and lost track. So it's for concepts as well as manipulatives. They are in the back of the lesson books. Another thing that you can use would be that find feature in the PDF file. That's another thing that I have made use of. But with those concept and manipulative indexes, if it's a particular material your child wants to work with, or a particular concept, that gives some easy flexibility within the curriculum for tailoring it to your child's interests. And then do embrace rabbit holes. So let's say that you're encouraging your child to make, healthy snacks and prepare things for themselves. Um, And maybe air popped popcorn is one of those things that your child can make themselves. And if they really enjoy that, maybe a question could be, hey, I wonder what the origins of popcorn are. Wonder what the nutritional content of popcorn. And you can really dive in to that thing that they love and pull in all different types of disciplines: science, health, history, music, art, depending on that topic. One of the things that can be fun to help spur some interest based discovery and learning are the national days or the World Day of, look through that calendar. There is a website, a couple of them that actually have lists of all of those days, and use those to say, hey, everyone in the world is looking at this thing that you're interested in, and have that community of learning at the same time as going down that rabbit hole of their interests. Okay, pivot. And yes, that is a Friends reference. So sometimes you see that, um, you know, your child gets frustrated. You don't want to necessarily keep pushing. So Maria Montessori recommends avoiding a child's boredom or frustration to build. You've probably seen that tip in the Schiller Learning Parent Guide if you have our math or our language arts. Um, and you may want to redirect. Um, and so one of the joys of homeschooling is that you are able to do that. You can stop an activity and come back to it later that day, that week. The Schiller Learning complete- completed worksheets are a wonderful learning management tool that will help you make note of the things that you have moved on from, and being able to come back and revisit those at another time. And with this, you also want to avoid, again, those negative phrases. So when you see them getting frustrated, hitting that stumbling block, avoid saying things like, we already went over this, or we've done this 45 times already. Why don't you remember it? Or this is easy. When you see your child is struggling with something and you say that this is easy, in hopes of encouraging them to try harder, what that is going to do is simply reinforce to them that they don't have the skill to be able to do it. Because when you say this is easy when they are struggling, then they feel like they just aren't up to the task. So there's a couple of things you can do to pivot. Do a mental redirect, a physical redirect, think multisensory. When they hit a stumbling block using one learning style, you can turn to one of the other three. So you've got that visual, tactile, um, visual, tactile, auditory, and kinesthetic. You can turn to one of the other learning styles, or you can do something creative. So that mental redirect, that could be that you snuggle up for a read aloud, that you turn to do some cerebral puzzles, maybe a word search or mazes, Sudoku, let's see, or a game, something like checkers or chess or a trivia game, something that's still challenging mental processing, but it's just doing it in a fun way that is pivoting away from the task, the subject that was that stumbling block. Uh, a physical redirect, that's going to be exercising or physically moving away from where you just were. This is a great chance to go outside, which we'll talk more about. Um, you can exercise, they can go for a walk. This is a great time to maybe pull out that nature journal. And you can do simple calisthenics. You could have a spur of the moment dance party. That is a popular thing that a lot of kids enjoy.
Antoinette, you have muted yourself. We can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Sorry about that. So crossing the midline, and that helps connect the left and right sides of the brain. Activities that cross the midline are inherent in Montessori, and you'll see that there are a number of them, throughout the ShillerLearning, both math and language arts. But you can also, specifically target that goal when you're taking that physical redirect as well. And then you can also just do something creative. Do a redirect into a craft project, art, singing a song, which also goes with that multi-sensory as well. But doing something creative, this would be not necessarily taking a different multi-sensory approach at that same topic. It would be pivoting away. So when your child is getting frustrated, don't keep pushing. Oh, just a little caveat to this. Don't jump in at the first sign. You may ask questions or make observations that could help your child just take a different path in their task. But we also want to give kids a chance to work through something and not jump in before it is actually necessary. So pivoting is important, but just don't pivot too early. Okay, so taking advantage of learning in your community. These learning opportunities are often free or low cost. They are going to expose your child to a variety of people, young and old alike, as well as a variety of careers. This can help your child start to think about what they may want to do in the future. So when you're taking that trip to the post office, to the grocery store, to the mall, maybe out to a cooking class, all of the different activities that your kids are involved in, whether it's music lessons or a martial arts or something like that. You can start to point out all of the different people that are involved in those enterprises and the different types of jobs that they have. Watching documentaries, one of my favorite things on the History Channel was, how it was made. And I'm actually not sure now as I go to mention it, what exactly that was, but it looks at all kinds of different things in life and how those things are actually produced. You could go on local factory tours. That's another great thing. And as you're taking advantages of those local learning opportunities, you're exposing your child to a variety of careers, well as opening up opportunities for internships, jobs, and even just friendships and mentoring. And those are going to be really beneficial. And this is something, that I've seen occur with in my children who are now adults, they definitely went through, that process of, developing relationships, just, in going out and doing things that would lead them into interesting opportunities, that they probably would not have had otherwise. Okay, so tip number 7 is use Montessori principles to guide needed change. Okay, so, you know, we research curricula, we research educational philosophies, we find a good fit for our families, we have a vision of what homeschooling is going to look like. And it's funny. Um, I will often say to people, we knew we were going to homeschool before our first was born, but I also thought we were going to homeschool. But just, the reality is not always what you may think it's going to be before you get started. So, it may mean that you had envisioned maybe the homeschooling be more of a team effort, but the realities of life mean that you're primarily responsible for that happening. Or you may pick a curriculum that you would have been perfectly happy with when you were a child. Like I was one of those kids who, as long as the material is challenging, I would be happy sitting in worksheets. When I started my son off homeschooling with that kind of approach, it did not work with him at all. We actually tried multiple math programs before finding ShillerLearning. And that was a little bit of a learning process for myself. And that realization that, okay, he doesn't see things the way I do. He doesn't learn the way I did. I need to find something that teaches the way he learns. And that's one of the reasons that a multisensory learn multimodality um, approach is really beneficial, because if you're using a program that uses all the learning styles, no matter what your child's dominant learning style, it's going to work for them. So, you know, we talked about a lot of different ways that you can pivot, um, different ways of, avoiding those problems from happening in the first place, with involving the child in planning, giving them responsibilities, and, pivoting. But sometimes we need to simply recognize that, okay, a change is in order here. So don't assume the problem is your child. Don't assume the problem is you. Don't assume that it's simply a problem of discipline. That if they were applying themselves, if they really applied themselves, they'd be able to do this. They'd be able to fit into a mold that was made for a different type of learner. Those kinds of expectations and thoughts are unrealistic, and they are going to sabotage our best efforts. So, um, the things, Montessori principles that you want to guide needed change. Number one, following the child, doing those observations, pay attention to how they seem to best learn things. Um, you know, Giving the child respect by trusting them to make decisions, to learn how to do things for themselves, and to be included in choices that affect their lives, and finding materials, educational approaches, lessons, manipulatives that are beautiful and will indeed appeal to all different learning styles. So those are the three things that are really beneficial to keep in mind as you are making needed changes. Okay, and then reaching out for encouragement. This is when I meet a new homeschool mom, this is my number one tip. And that is to make local connections with other homeschool parents who are going to have not necessarily all of the same, shared experiences you're having, but you'll have people that you can commiserate with and celebrate with in person. Online communities are great, but having those local connections, there are definitely times uh, that you will be glad that you have that in addition to your online connections. For online connections and encouragement, do be sure to follow Schiller Learning. We are on all of your favorite social channels: Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. We have TikTok now. Um, I myself have not ventured into the world of TikTok, but I know more and more homeschoolers are indeed in that space. So all of your social media platforms, we are there, YouTube as well. And then groups. Schiller Learning has two Facebook groups. So check those out. Homeschool conventions are a fabulous mode of encouragement. If you have never been to one, and yes, again, there are online conventions. Um, they do serve their purpose. There are some that are better than others, but it's a different type of engagement. The Top Picks Homeschool Curriculum Fair, I have to say, that has the best engagement and interaction between vendors and attendees. So if you're looking for an online event, that's a great one to try. If you've never been to a physical homeschool convention event, highly recommend giving it a try, because even just attending as a vendor, I get encouragement from every single homeschool convention that I attend. And when my children have had the opportunity to go to homeschool conventions, they are encouraged as well. They love seeing, all of the kids from really across the state or even across the country who are doing what they are doing and comparing experiences, making new friendships, finding new people who, they share things in common interests, hobbies. So definitely try out that homeschool convention. And then, in addition to your homeschool community, remember your non homeschooling family and friends. Think about what their expertise is. And, maybe there is an activity that your child could do with them that would be extremely beneficial in their learning, whether it's one of those random rabbit holes they're going to go down based on interest led learning, or if it's a topic in your prepared curriculum. Also, just to for that mental break. Sometimes if we're, have something unplanned and unpleasant that comes in up in life, non-homeschooling family, maybe they can take the kids for a couple of hours while you address something. And that's, one of the things I love about Schiller curriculum. With that scripting, that means there's no lesson prep for you. It also means that you can hand your kids and their program over to someone, and they can just pick up at the next thing and keep reading. So it really lends itself very well to co-teaching, which is nice because, when those unexpected but always happening things do come up in life, it makes it easier to accommodate those. But remember your non-homeschooling family and friends for both their expertise as well as reaching out to them, when you need someone. Okay, so get outside. This is so important. Maria Montessori greatly stressed the importance of your child being connected with nature, all of the benefits that has for both physical as well as mental well-being. For this, you simply need to be prepped for all types of weather. There is no excuse for not getting outside. If it is raining, your child can don raining gear and get outside. If it is cold, um, you know, the, having the appropriate clothing for cold weather means that is not an excuse for staying indoors. Take pictures of your child outside and the fun that they are having, and make use of those in displaying the photos as well as making photo books. I mentioned earlier that you want to magnify the behaviors you would like to multiply. That comes to getting outside applies to getting outside as well. When we're highlighting that, it's reinforcing those good memories and experiences to your child, and is going to make them want to get outdoors more often. Keeping an outdoor basket next to the door can also help inspire your child to get out more often. What does that mean, an outdoor basket? It's seasonal things that your child can use outside. So in the summertime, um, maybe it's going to be bubbles, or um, some watercolor, water paints. You could still do watercolor painting outdoors in winter. It's just not going to be as pleasant. That's really a better summertime. So the types of activities, the types of materials that your child uses for that season would be in that basket. Use a nature journal. That's one of the things that could be in that basket year round, having it right next to the door. So as your child heads out, they grab that nature journal. They can put in little things that they're collecting outdoors, fresh leaves, dried leaves, um, new plants that they're finding in the backyard that they don't know the name of and can research. They can, draw pictures of things, write about things that they're observing, things that they're hearing, things that they're feeling. The nature journal can be all of that. And then also, to encourage and inspire your child to the outdoors, use the structure of free programs that are out there for inspiration. You've got Every Kid Outdoors. With that is linked to the national parks. And if your child is in fourth grade, they get a free membership, a free pass, and that is good for that child for an entire year, as well as everyone who accompanies that child. So family, friends, whoever it is who goes with that fourth grader gets free admission to that federal land, that federal water. They do have a complete list of those on their website. So if you have a fourth grader, sign up for Every Kid Outdoors. There's also a wonderful movement, 1,000 Hours Outside. They have tons of free resources, ways of tracking outdoor time, as well as inspiring that. So you can look for, some structured programs that are already out there that will also inspire. Okay. At the end of the day, remember that you know what's best for your child. Um, why do we say that? Well, no one on this planet loves your child more than you do. You know your child better than anyone else does. Um, you get outside opinions. I mean, I don't know any homeschooler who does not seek um, opinions of other homeschoolers, opinions of experts, that does a ton of research before making their decisions. And so you've got all of that um, support, and then you know your child better than anyone else. It's also important to remember that sure, you can't do a perfect job of educating your child, but neither can anyone else. If they were in a private school, they would not be getting an absolutely perfect education. They may be able to get a great education. Same thing with public school. There is no public school that's going to give a perfect education. They may get a great one. In homeschooling, don't feel like just because things aren't perfect that your child isn't scoring in that top percentile in a standardized test, that they aren't going to go to college when they are 11 or 12. Sure, some homeschoolers have those experiences and end up in Ivy League universities at really young ages, but those are the exceptions. So, don't feel like just because you're falling short of perfect that you are falling short. Um, you really do know what's best for your child. Just keep all of those tips that we've talked about um, in your mind as you are doing your planning, doing your observing as you're going through the year, seeing what works, what doesn't for your child. Stay positive in your parenting, foster that growth mindset in your child, and you'll find that, listening to that inner voice, following at the tips, the principles of Montessori, it's really going to help you to maximize all of the effort that you are putting into this labor of love. So